We watched all 3 parts of Bethenny Frankel's horrendous interview with Rachel Leviss.
And we watched Stassi's, Lala's, Sheena's, and Ariana's response to said podcast.
So we're going to go over it all, from all of the lies to the cast reactions and why this was just a major fail.
Welcome back to the Real Couchwives podcast, where we overanalyze all things Bravo.
So Rachel Leviss has now broken her silence. It's the first time that we hear from her after the Vanderpump Rules season 10 reunion. And I think we were all really just kind of holding our breath, hoping there would be some sort of like introspection. There definitely was a good interview to be had there, but Bethenny was definitely guiding her in a certain direction. And unfortunately, we were just met with like a lot of lies.
So there were a lot of lies that I think were seen by a lot of people pretty easily. We definitely want to get into all of them. I think one of the biggest ones that stands out to me is, the idea that Ariana and Rachel were never friends, right? Like that this was a big hoax. She was just using Ariana and Sheena to be able to be close to Tom. She was using them for the show. She was using them as like an alliance. And I do think to a certain extent, if you look back at those early seasons of Vanderpump Rules, she was kind of using them, right? Like she needed people to be able to film with, and she was always upset because James was alienating her from the group because nobody wanted to film with James.
Right.
So by not being able to film with James, like she couldn't film with anybody.
But that's so true. I mean, because she didn't straight out say that she was using them, but it's true. Like that was definitely heavily implied, and like it's just like, did you think that was better? Like did that seem like a better response?
Yeah.
That, like, oh no, we weren't best friends. I was actually just using her for airtime.
Exactly.
So it's okay that I cheated with her boyfriend for like 8 months.
Because we weren't best friends.
Like what? Now so now you're like double hurting Ariana. Like not only are you cheating with her boyfriend, but you're also making her think that you guys are friends. But then she did try to make it seem like Ariana was also in on it, which we know that she wasn't, because she also just said that with Sheena on her interview.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's just it. Like, Sheena brings up in her podcast that on the day that Ariana found out about the affair, Sheena and Rachel had been filming at Chicks in the Office. They'd been doing that podcast together that day. And Rachel had said, I know who my true friends are, referring to Rachel, Ariana, and Sheena, so many names.
But she even said Ariana and Sheena. Like, I don't think she just like implied it.
Right,
right.
It
said their names.
Yeah, exactly. And like, just for, you that day to be saying, these are my true friends, these are my best friends, and now you to be like, these are not my friends. I never even knew that girl. I saw her like twice a year, occasionally when we were filming and in no other circumstances.
Those Instagram pictures are photoshopped.
Yeah, exactly. You coming to my pageant, you inviting me to your Coachella house, you having me over for Thanksgiving, it means nothing. And that's basically what Ariana responds when, in this podcast with Sheena today, is that all of this couldn't have meant nothing, right? Like all of this meant something to Ariana. She included her in her friend group. She was part of her inner circle because she cared for Rachel, and that was even a sticking point in season 10, right? Like Rachel was this person who, like, nobody could trust your man with, like, Katie and Lala were like talking bad about her, talking smack about her, and Ariana was the one that said to Katie, like, I love this girl so much, she's one of my best friends, like there's literally nothing you could say that wouldn't solidify, like it wouldn't change my mind about her, right?
Yeah, like, Ariana stuck up for her the whole season to like all of the girls. She went against like Katie, who she is like opening up a restaurant with, to defend Rachel. So like, and it also just wasn't needed. Like, why do you need to downplay your friendship with her? Also, it doesn't matter. Like, even if she wasn't your best friend, what you did was still horrible.
Yeah.
And like,
that's just it. And that's what Ariana and Sheena kind of come to the conclusion of, is that they think that basically what she's doing is she's trying to diminish the friendship so that it's not as big of a deal, right? It's not a big deal that you slept with your best friend's man because you didn't sleep with your best friend's man. You just slept with a man and you happen to be friends with his girl. What?
Like, you're still having an affair. Like, any way you slice it. Yeah, exactly. This made it worse, but like
much worse.
It's not like this is absolving you of like any of like your part in this.
Yeah.
And then, because Bethenny also has never watched anything of Vanderpump Rules, and also has her own clear agenda that she's trying to show that these reality TV producers like make these fake situations and like alienate people. She is not going to question any of this, and instead she's going to lead this even further of like, you know, like it's real, but it's real for reality TV in a place where you're like hanging out with people that you wouldn't normally be hanging out with. And it's like, no, that's literally not true. Like this show is actually about a group of friends. And if you had watched a second of it, you would know that. Like maybe for some of the Real Housewives, that could be said that they kind of plot people into this scenario, but like that's not Vanderpump Rules. And like that was one of the first things that they said. They started out this interview with this lie, and I feel like that ruined credibility for like the rest of the interview for me. Like I feel like that just like rubbed me the wrong way right away. Right away I realized, okay, this interview is A, for Bethenny to continue on in her reality reckoning, and B, it's I guess for Rachel to paint herself as a victim. And that's the way it pretty much continued on, which was just really disappointing.
It is really disappointing, and that's just it. Like Scheana even points out herself, she's like, this is VPR, this is not Big Brother. Like
the alliances,
the challenge, you know, the backstabbing. Like obviously these things happen in real life relationships, these things happen in Big Brother relationships, but you're not competing to win at the end of the season. This is supposed to be their real lives, and they thought that they were reflecting their real life by being friends with this person, and clearly whatever Rachel was thinking, or whatever Rachel has now convinced herself of to be okay with whatever happened, like is just, it's not computing. And even
that's
like
more what it seems to be, is
I
the
think
convincing.
So. And even on like Stassi's and Lala's podcast, they both like completely say like they were so close, this is total bullshit. Like they can't believe that like she's attempting to paint this narrative to suggest otherwise.
Yeah. And a lot of people have also said like, I actually think that Rachel thinks what she's saying is true. Like I think that she has literally convinced herself that she is speaking the truth, which is like
the scariest part.
Another thing entirely. Another thing that was pointed out on Bethenny's behalf, or not behalf, Bethenny pointed it out.
Is on her behalf.
On her own behalf, actually, because
on her own behalf.
It was for, you know, her agenda. Is that apparently Raquel gets paid less than an intern. So
specifically one of Bethenny's interns.
One of Bethenny's interns.
Apparently the best paid interns of the entire world.
Like just be an intern forever. So Lisa Vanderpump has come out and said that Rachel has made $361,000 for the season. So I have so many thoughts on this, more than just because of what she's being paid, but also because she's demanding to be paid what Tom and Ariana are being paid. And like they've literally been like, Tom's been on the show for like the whole time.
I know.
And like, Ariana's been there for a very long time. But let's unpack that slowly. Do we think that this is true?
So this is the interesting thing, is I was highly skeptical of it until today when I listened to that Scheana podcast, because Scheana confirms, because Scheana was the one to help Rachel get the lawyer that helped negotiate her contract for season 10 that secured $19,000 an episode for Rachel. And
that's wild.
And I did the math. I double checked to make sure that 19 times 19 19,000 times 19 episodes is $361,000. Obviously after taxes it's a little bit less than that. Like I'm not going to pretend to know what like income tax is like in California, but that's still like what you're able to put down. And like when you write in like for like a mortgage or something, you're saying I'm making $361,000 a year. Like that's not a bad amount of money.
But this is the thing, like, so like this whole podcast are like, you're making nothing, like you got peanuts and everyone else is running to the bank. Like that is not peanuts.
No.
Like and also I don't think anyone got more money from Bravo because of this scandal. Like they went off and they made merch, and they like saw an opportunity and they capitalized on it. I'm sorry that probably no one would want to buy your merch if you put it out.
Well, so Lala did suggest that like Rachel should have should have made her own merch or attempted to make her own merch from this. I think
really?
maybe some people would have gotten it.
You know what?
Know.
Maybe they would.
Maybe like the people that felt bad, the people that like Tom Sandoval, like apparently even Tom Sandoval made merch, which I wasn't really aware of. Jesus. But I just tried to like block out anything that happened with him in the last like 6 months so that I didn't have to like pay attention to it.
Recently, he's been spotted somewhere at Sir or at Tom, probably at Tom Tom.
Yeah.
Wearing like a dipped out shirt. So like is he now trying to make merch?
Maybe that's what it is, and I'm just ignoring him, so I don't know.
To be fair, if Rachel put merch out at the time, I don't think that would be well received. I think we would be That's like, fair. Look, she's even putting out merch. Like, she doesn't care at all.
What a heartless bee. How dare she?
Yeah, I don't think that would have been the right move.
It's true. It probably wouldn't have been the right move. But yeah, like Lala does say on her podcast as well, like, this is just how the cookie crumbles, right? Like, you get paid based on your seniority. You haven't been a full-time cast member on this show. Stassi even mentions it as well in her podcast. She's like, I even made less money because I left for a year. Like, I was behind everybody else because of that year. So like, it really is just based on seniority. And, I can kind of understand why Rachel thinks that she should be making as much as Tom and Ariana. But I can also understand why Bravo would like never let that happen if this is how they pay people.
I totally don't think that she should be.
I don't think she should. I can understand why she thinks she does.
Why she thinks in her head.
Yeah, in her head.
But that's it. Like, also, Reality Bites broke it down really well too. That it's like the way that you're paid is not from like the amount of drama that you bring towards the season. Like, there's A characters and B characters, and it's like how long you've been an A character. It'll kind of like compound.
Yeah,
and also so like how long you're able to hold that title, which I guess could kind of correlate a bit to the drama that you're bringing or like that you're contributing in some way. But for this in particular, if she is trying to get more money because of the Scandoval, she actively lied and kept the reality out of the show. And then after it broke, she didn't say anything. So like, what did you really do to earn that extra money?
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying like, it's not like she's amazing reality TV. She just happened to be involved in this like insane story.
Yeah, exactly. It was very much something that just kind of happened to her. It wasn't supposed to get out. It wasn't supposed to be a storyline at all on this season. Like, they didn't want this out there. And like, cameras literally picked back up. They actually probably got she got an extra paycheck because Cameron picked back up, right? Like, she would have had probably two less episodes, I'm betting, because they would have had the original like whatever set of episodes that they had, and I bet they would have only had a 2-part reunion. They got a 3-part reunion plus a secrets revealed, so maybe even it would have been 3 less. I don't know. Would there have been a secrets revealed if none of us had cared about season 10?
You would make less money.
The other thing, $60,000 just like that.
The other thing too is like, you have to think of the precedents this would set. Like, let's say she did get this huge pay like jump because of being involved in this. I feel like that would only fuel fake storylines. I feel like then people would be even more motivated to self-produce and to create the messiest, craziest drama that they could.
Yeah.
And, a lot of Housewives series are already doing that. We're already seeing fake storylines and they're not fun and no one wants more of them. And I just feel like that would set just like such a bad precedence.
Yeah, that's very fair. And it also would mean that you would just need to make a splash in your first season, and then you could coast the rest of the way, right? Like, there'd be no, like, as long as you kind of like did enough to continue to be a first rank cast member, top tier cast member, you would be like earning what everybody else is earning. So like, you would have no incentive. I don't know. It just feels weird.
No, it's true. And this is what bothers me so much about the Bethenny of it all, is like, she more than anyone knows this. Yeah. She knows that she would not be getting more money for that. Like, she's fully just like creating this sloppy, messy storyline that she knows nothing about because she thinks that it's going to help her, in her cause, which like, I actually think Bethenny's done work. Like, I think what she's doing now is actually hurting this idea of unionizing because she's losing all her credibility because she's just like spewing lies.
Yeah. And she thinks that she's doing something so remarkable and so honorable by starting this reality reckoning. And she's actually hurting the cause more than anything. Well, and I have to wonder, like, how much how much did Rachel tell Bethenny she was making for Bethenny to think that Rachel was making less than an intern? Like,
that's maybe she's like, yeah, 19, and
I
then
was
she's
making
like, for
$19,000
the whole thing, and then she just like didn't answer after that.
She was just like, I don't know.
Well, it's just like, it's just such a bad look for both of them.
Yeah.
And like, not to go on a Bethenny tangent, but I can't watch this and not just have like, I honestly feel like I left it possibly feeling more angry at Bethenny than at Rachel. Actually, not possibly, like definitely.
Yeah.
Which is really
difficult. I think
difficult.
that's pretty fair.
Yeah, which like you didn't know that's what would happen when you went into it.
No.
But like if you listen to her episode right after the 3-part series, which is like the aftermath, she's like really like in her head, like she is a martyr. She's like, you know, like Rachel has gotten so much hate, and like I have now taken on this hate for her. But you know, like everyone that I respect in the industry is telling me that like you're on the right side of history.
Oh
and
my
like,
God.
you know, it's so hard to do the right thing, but like people are scared of change. And I have 3 documentarians who have reached out to me. Like she literally thinks she's out here doing the Lord's work.
What have they reached out to you for? Like what?
Yeah, like why would you be the face of this documentary? You who has watched apparently 10 episodes, which I don't even believe you watched 10 episodes.
Not a chance. Which 10 episodes did you watch? I need an itemized list. Like I need like a screenshot of like your Peacock history to know which 10 episodes you watched of the show.
No, you watched the reunion, and that was literally it.
That was literally it. And even then you were like half listening to it. You were like on your phone scrolling.
But yeah, it's just like
TikToking as you like.
It just kills me because like I've also seen, you know, she keeps saying that she's super unbothered, and she's like, you know, I don't care about all the hate I'm getting because it's free engagement. And it's like, you don't care so much that you made 2 episodes ranting about this to tell us how much you don't care.
Yeah, exactly. No, she just loves it. She just loves it. And that's the problem, is that we're giving her the engagement. She's just like feeding off of it. It's making her stronger every single day, the more that we talk about her.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm reading a lot of comments that are like, I really loved Bethenny, and like I can't handle it anymore. And like I am in that camp too. I was like, she's an OG New York. Like
I know.
She was my favorite for a long time, and now it's like I can't listen to her voice.
Even. I know. That's the problem too, is I got so cocky because as soon as everybody turned on Sandoval, I was like, excellent, everybody's joined my team. And now that Bethenny, I'm like, no, I fell for this one. I thought she was a good one.
But I digress into it's just like you can't not talk about that part if you talk about this interview, because it was so heavily skewed towards Bethenny and the agenda that she had, and like the fact that she didn't question anything because it wouldn't self-serve her.
No, exactly. Well, that's just it. Like I watched so much. I'm sorry, it's my last little thing. I watched so much of this interview because I actually watched like the YouTube version of it, and
that's rough. I didn't
watching Bethenny like process what Raquel was saying. And like I could tell that like a little bit of the old Bethenny was in there and like wanted to like actually like say, well, that sounds really stupid or something, right? Like I can tell that she had like real thoughts and feelings, but she just kept on being like, okay, because she's just like trying to calibrate, like, okay, how do I get this to work back into like the reality reckoning and like, you know, reframe this so that we're getting back on track? Because if I actually responded to you what I want to say right now, like I would be going off in the wrong direction. I'd be attacking you instead of like trying to support my cause. And I just felt like that's what it was this whole time. It was like,
I know. And it's just like the thing that gets me the most upset is that like this was such a lost opportunity, because I feel like there was an interesting interview to get here. Like the interesting thing that ended up happening is like the tide started to turn a little bit. I think that people realized that we all got swept up in this. And I think that there was a little bit of a mob mentality that started to happen. And like, like the reunion was really rough on Raquel, and like I think she took a lot of abuse from like the general public. Not to say that like what she did, like, you know, what she did was horrible, but like we all got a little bit swept up in this, and I think that we like people started to like be thinking that.
I think so.
And I think that if it was more of like an introspective and balanced conversation, that like she did say certain things that like, you know, are super unfair to her, like the fact that she was recorded by Tom Sandoval, you know, which we're going to get into later. But because the beginning part of this interview was just so many like lies and I'm a victim, it just kind of like discredited the whole conversation, and like there just wasn't enough accountability. Like she said the words, but there's nothing behind it.
Yeah, that's what it really feels like, is that there's no way she's actually processed this and has dealt with it and will be in a place where she can talk about it, which I think is why I'm kind of upset that she didn't come back for the next season, because I almost think that if she had returned for season 11, or I guess I wish that if she had returned to season 11, she would have the opportunity to like hear what Ariana, Lala, Katie, like what they would say and what they would like say back to her, and then she would maybe be able to be like challenged and like hear about like this situation from another perspective, somebody who is like deep in the thick of it, right? Like somebody who could tell her like Tom probably like was manipulating you, and Tom was feeding you a narrative of this relationship, and you know, she doesn't have that person that's going to challenge her right now. A therapist isn't going to have the knowledge of this show. The therapist is just going to hear what you have to say and like give you back an answer. And I think if she had returned to season 11, she might have had the chance to actually like grow from this. And, you know, now she's going to have to do it over years and years and years of therapy, hopefully. Or she'll never learn. Or she'll just never learn. It'll never happen.
It. And like, I think like the main thing, like the times that you become more sympathetic to her is when you realize the levels of manipulation from Sandoval.
Yeah.
And that was just not addressed in any way in this podcast. Like,
no,
you could tell that she still hasn't grappled with that. And like, instead, it seemed like there was more anger towards Ariana. And she was trying to basically like, she was not blaming, but like it was kind of like she was trying to discredit a little bit of Ariana and some of the things that she said. So it's like, clearly you haven't done all the work. I think you're doing it. It was too soon to do an interview, and it was the wrong person to do an interview with. And I don't know how you now come back later, because this was the moment.
That's just it. This is very unfortunate. And I think if she had come back for season 11, like she would have better prospects. Had she come to see, like she could have shopped this around. She could have gone to People. She could have gone to TMZ. She could have gone to Daily Mail. Like there's so many like public. She might have even been able to go to like a, I don't know, like a Good Morning America. I don't know. Like she would have been able to go see somebody. Like I'm sure you could have shopped this around to like different networks. If you'd stayed within NBC, they would have appreciated that. Like there's things that you could have done. And it just feels like she just keeps on making the wrong choice, unfortunately. And and now I don't know how she moves forward.
Just so misguided. But according to Bethenny, she's very happy with the podcast. She's
killing it. Yeah, they're both really happy. They're very happy.
They're very happy. They think this went great.
This was perfect. They're so glad that they decided to do this.
No notes.
No. So, not for them, that's for sure. Anyway, sorry.
What's our next lie? Sorry, we went on a little bit of tangent.
Our next lie is that Tom Sandoval got a producer credit. So obviously, you know, Rachel says in Bethenny's podcast that like this was something that he was able to get because of Scandoval, how successful it was. This is something that Stassi was very fast to refute in her podcast, basically saying that like Sandoval probably told Rachel that he was going to get a producer credit, kind of like to stroke his own ego, right? Like he's doling out the Kool-Aid and she's still unfortunately taking it. And basically Stassi says that like production would never give a producer credit to a castmate. Like it just wouldn't make any sense. Maybe if it was like a production that you had like made hand in hand, right? Like you like were doing a spin-off and it was like specifically about you and your life and you had control and you were pitching it to the network, maybe you could get a producer credit, but you'd never get it on an ensemble cast like this. It's just not going to happen. No.
And if he did, which I don't like, he definitely didn't, they would definitely not tell people. Like, you know how it's very speculated that Kyle is like a producer in like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yeah. I mean, she is a producer, that's for sure.
But that's it. And then the other thing is like, it's not dissimilar to the fact that Raquel is demanding to make more money. It's like, why would Sandoval get a producer credit when he like actively kept this off camera the whole time and then it ended up blowing up in his face?
Right.
You know, like, and he, I guess, continued to film, but like, I don't think anyone was like, "Yay, Sandoval! Like you did great."
I think the producer credit was like supposed to be like an incentive to him to keep filming. Right? It was like, oh, we'll give you a producer credit. Like, hey, please be happy. Keep on filming with us. Like, it's okay. We'll give you a producer credit. You know, it's all good.
But like, wouldn't producer credits just like discredit reality TV? Like, it would be very hard to say that things are real if like your cast is also producing it.
Well, I think I'm the only person I can think of off the top of my head that this happens to is that Whitney is a producer of Southern Charm. And he has
is that in the later seasons where he just kind of like shows up?
I'm pretty sure he's the original one that pitched it to the network. And that's why
you're right.
He's been able to be a producer on the show. But again, I'm saying it as like, you know, if it's coming hand in hand with the network, is you're bringing them a show and you're saying, I'm going to be a producer, I'm also going to be a cast member, like, then they're fine with it. But there's ways for that to happen, but it's not going to happen here, especially as like a band-aid to like be like, please stay at our show, don't leave us, when like clearly he needs them more than they need him, right? Well, like he is $250,000 in debt to his mom, plus whatever he's in debt to for Schwartz and Sandy's, and like his house and his band, which costs a fortune. Like he needs this producer credit. Though also one thing that Stassi mentioned in her podcast is that they are making, he and I guess anybody else that's like a tier, like top tier season 10 cast member or 10 seasons cast member, which would be Sheena and Katie. Are making like an ungodly amount of money.
If Raquel / Rachel is making $361,000, I can't even like fathom.
I don't even want to think about
10-year. And they've been A-cast the
entire time. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is crazy. Anyways,
so another one of the lies that's actually totally not related to any of this, but just one that like just jumped out as such a lie, and then was also validated later, is that the night in oh gosh, where were they?
In Las Vegas.
Yeah, in Las Vegas.
Oh, this is the one I was going to talk about too.
This is the one you're going to talk about as well. When Rachel was super sloppy and makes out with Oliver, and then like Lala has the confrontation with her with the, you know, I wouldn't trust you with my man.
And good thing you don't have a man to you know, have around.
The infamous last words. And apparently Christina Kelly and Lala went up to Rachel after and they were like, oh my god, like reality TV ratings gold, you killed it, girl. Right away I was like, never did I see this coming out of either of their mouths.
No, not a chance. Well, and so Lala does dispute this in her podcast as well. She's like, this never happened. I don't know what makes you think that this happened. This never happened. And Lala even says that like basically Rachel goes to sleep that night when she's drunk. You know, she wakes up the next morning and she comes into Lala and Katie's room or whatever. They were all in like the same bed together. I don't think they were sharing rooms, but whatever. And like that's when they're filming. And like when they pick back up the filming, that's when they see Rachel for the first time that day. Like there was never like a time in between filming when like Christina and Lala like snuck over to Lala to Rachel and were like, oh my god, reality TV gold, you're amazing, you're so good at this.
But I just like I could never even picture those two saying that. So like I didn't even need to hear Lala saying that it wasn't true to know that it wasn't true. Like if you're gonna lie, at least lie better. I feel like I've said that so many times across these like podcasts. Said that a couple
times. It's true though.
Also, like I don't understand. I feel like Rachel now knows that like everything she says, you know, the cast is going to go on their podcast and talk about it.
You should
think. Like, why did she think she could just get away with this? Bethenny's not going to refute it, but everyone else will.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's just it. I think Rachel just like lives in this like different version of reality where like everything is not the way that it actually is. Like I think everything in her mind is just so like fed through like one transcript and like it comes into out the other, and she's just like she holds on to tiny little pieces of information. She's like, okay, well, this is the thing that I heard. I don't care about anything else that might be actually true around it. I'm just going to hold on to this as the truth. And that actually is kind of what brings us to the next one, which is that Send It to Darrell paid for Lala's house, which
I thought Lala has said that was true.
So this is
her
what's
down
interesting.
Payment.
So this is what's interesting is that it's both true and not true. Basically, Lala was talking a big game when Send It to Darrell like blew up. She was doing an amazing job. It was making a whole bunch of money. And she said that Send It to Darrell repaid for her down payment for her house. So basically anything that she spent on her house in Palm Springs, she made back the down payment like right away with Send It to Darrell. So she technically had bought the house already with her own money. But and this is just it, right? Like I can see why Rachel like clung onto this tiny little piece of information and was like, Lala made so much money from Scandoval that she made one sweater and it paid for a down payment for a house. But it's just like it's one of those like tiny little finicky things where it's like your representation of like what actually happened versus like what actually happened are not quite the same, right?
But I guess in this case, to Rachel's credit, Lala said that.
Yeah, Lala, and that's just it. She was like, Lala was saying one thing and Rachel was hearing the other version of it, right?
Right.
But yeah, you're right. They are like basically the same. And that also kind of brings us to okay, so one of the smaller ones, I just wanted to quickly go over this one, is the Kristen being fired from Bravo and then being given like a hush money kind of like story. We're going to give you a spin-off to get you to not talk about James Kennedy and how he was abusive anymore.
Right.
Which is like a very interesting way to like spin that version of like what happened, because I think Kristen has been pretty vocal about like how her relationship with James wasn't great and there were issues in it, and you know she's talked about it on podcast, she's talked about it in her book, she has like a whole chapter dedicated to their relationship. I don't think she specifically names James. I think she specifically doesn't name James, but I think anybody that like knows the timeline can like kind of fit in that like that's his chapter. And just the idea that like Bravo would care that much about James Kennedy to like want to cover up his reputation, which we all know was a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Right? And then also like that the way that they would like cover that up would be like a hush money spin-off. Like, here, don't talk about James anymore. We're going to give you a spin-off, as if that's like,
I know,
and then handing out spin-offs to anybody that talks bad about a Bravolebrity. Like,
and then
on.
Bethenny kept being like, "Oh, from fired to spin-off, like that's such a crazy jump." And it's like, exactly. You can very clearly see the trajectory and the sequence of events that happened to allow Kristen to come back to Bravo.
Yeah.
Like she sat it out for a little while, and then this crazy thing happened where she was in like a unique position to talk about it. There is also that thing that we've been talking about before where it's like, because Sandoval's so bad, somehow in Bravo's mind, Jax, who is like also been horrible, now seems less horrible. It was and you know what, Rachel did mention this, and like, to be honest, like that is unfair. Jax being able to come back redeemed somehow through nothing that he's done isn't fair. But like, it's not this like crazy like fired to spin off because of James. Like, it's, you could see why she came back. It was just like a weird perfect storm for her and for Jax to reemerge.
That's just it. Like, enough times passed. Yeah, exactly. And like, she came on for this like tiny little scene. Apparently she didn't even get paid for that scene that she did in the like the finale of season 10. So like, you know, Bravo's probably just been like, you're fine, come on back over, or whatever, we're gonna do the spin-off, hopefully it'll make us some money and we'll be good to go. Because that's what they're in it for, right? They're in it to make some money. They don't care about what happens to James Kennedy's career or his reputation because of Kristen Doute. Like, if
there's enough of a negative response, they would let him go too. Like,
get rid of him. Like, dime a dozen. Can find a million DJs in LA. Come on. In the Valley, I guess now.
So then another lie that Rachel has said is really about like the state of her and Tom, not her, Ariana and Tom's relationship. And this is also where you very much can see that she clearly has not had enough space from Sandoval, because she's still talking on his talk track. Like, she's saying things that we heard on the Howie Mandel podcast, things that we've heard Tom say in his little like breadcrumb trail that he was trying to lead in season 10, right?
Yeah.
Which is that Tom and Ariana were basically just a brand at this point, and that, you know, Rachel never would have like had this affair had she not known
Yeah.
that their relationship was essentially like done.
Yeah, and Ariana like refused that. She's like, he might have had a conversation with me at one point, but like I never would have been at the show at Tom Tom on the day that I found his phone and like found the recording on his phone had we been broken up. And she just kind of like so right off the bat she like really disputes that idea. But then in regards to like the whole, you know, our relationship being a business, she's like, that is 100% news to me. I did not know that we were just a business. I was so invested in this relationship. You know, if you think about what they actually were doing as like business partners, like Ariana doesn't see anything there to be a business. Like they did the book together, they did the fancy AF cocktails.
And that's just because he like inserted himself into her win because he needs to be the center of attention.
Exactly. Like it was her book. And he was like, allegedly, like, you know, everybody at the bar is like asking, like, why is Ariana doing a book? Like,
that was so annoying.
Yeah, everybody's coming up to me and being like, why is Ariana doing a book? Like, why wouldn't you be doing the book? And Ariana's like, I've been literally working at like some of the top like bars and restaurants like my entire life. Like, I'm doing a book because I'm a bartender. Like, you can go do your own book, Tom. But you know, still he like wormed his way in there and got in there and like ruined the book. And now luckily she's coming out with her own book. And we're all gonna be able to pre-order it and we're gonna get it for Christmas. It's gonna be amazing. But yeah, it's just so that there was that. And then she also said that they did like a uh like a commercial for Alka-Seltzer.
Oh.
And it was like, yeah, that's the version of a brand that he's talking about, is that this idea that we were nothing but roommates and a brand and business partners is just insane because we weren't. We really
Well, that's it. And like, oh my God, I just had a thought. It just left my head immediately.
Well, one thing that I was thinking is like, sorry, is like if you think about like brands on the show, like Tom and Tom.
That's what I was gonna say. That's what
say. All right, go for it. You got this.
No, that's it. I was just gonna say they're more of a brand than her and him and Ariana are.
Exactly. That's just it. Like they like I think they, from what it sounds like they do nightclub promotions together. They obviously have 2 bars together. They are
named after
partners,
them.
both named after them. Like they have taken up a huge amount of this series being business partners. They are the relationship that is a business. It's just so crazy that like he would think that he could like tell us and like, you know, gaslight us into thinking that like their relationship wasn't anything more.
That's such a good point. But just like it almost like makes you still feel bad for Rachel, the fact that like she really has just internalized everything that Tom has said to her as truth, and like this is the story I want to get from her. Like I just hate that she's still telling his narrative. Like,
that's just
and taking the brunt for it.
That's just it. And like if she doesn't like see it, like I have such a problem with that. I'm like, I don't understand how you're still so deep into the thick of it. Like you haven't seen this guy. Well, okay, we don't really know when they've like last seen each other. And like she claims that they've only had like 2 emails together, but you haven't really seen this guy like for at least like 6 months, right? Like it's been a long time since they've been together, since they've been in this relationship, and you're still supporting him.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe, you know, the thing that she said about why she was scared to come clean about the timeline is because he was like the only person who she had left. Like, I wonder if there's a bit of her that still thinks that.
Yeah.
But
I'm also just
problem,
though. I think that's
100%. And I'm also just curious to know what Tom's saying in season 11 about her, because like I'm sure he's thrown her all the way under the bus.
Just thrown Rachel.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he's thrown her.
Like especially since she's not there. Like I feel like that's the direction that it's gone.
Yeah.
And like it sucks.
Let me check my notes actually really fast because I think I got a little bit of a hint. Yeah, I guess she was just talking more about kind of like how Ariana thinks that like Tom is still like paying for kind of like what happened to him, and that he's still very much like towing this narrative of like Ariana was a problem in our relationship. Ariana was the one that, you know, she was a demon. She was a horrible person. She's moody. She's mean. She
She
doesn't
doesn't
respect
stock the
me.
batteries and the toilet paper.
She's the worst roommate ever. So he's still kind of like telling this much the same narrative that we saw from him last season.
I'm sure.
And yeah, and I'm sure Rachel is probably being thrown under the bus, but I think Ariana more than anything is concerned that she is also being thrown under the bus still by this person that like has no ability to take any accountability, no ability to take any accountability for his
No.
actions in his life, which actually brings us to a very interesting final lie, I would say, which was the FaceTime video recording. Unfortunately, a very sensitive topic. But basically, Rachel in the Bethenny Frankel podcast talks about the recording and its existence, and she kind of mentions that she believes that this video was, you know, seen by Ariana from Tom's phone, and that it has been passed around to their friend group, and talks about how the friend group, she's kind of like heard in great detail, allegedly, what the contents of the video are and like what's happening
Yeah.
on the video. And so Ariana, obviously, when she had the chance to go onto Sheena's podcast, like refutes that like unequivocally. Like she's like, I did not I had that video in my possession for like 5 seconds. Like by the time that I phoned her to confront her about the affair, like I didn't have it anymore. Like I did not keep that thing. I did not pass that around. I watched 5 seconds of it. I figured out what it was, and I like maybe she took a couple screenshots to send, because I think it sounded like Rachel got a couple screenshots of the video to show like, you're dead to me, like
Right.
this is what I have just witnessed. But yeah, Ariana like says that she does like, if people are saying that they know what's on the video, Ariana is like, it's very straightforward what's on the video, so they're able to figure it out. But if nobody's seen it, she hasn't shown it to anybody, and
Right. And
that's yeah,
that's what's so dangerous here too, is and like just upsetting that she really didn't, like Rachel really didn't say that much about the fact that Tom filmed her without her knowledge.
not
And
nearly
this,
enough.
no, and this is the problem. And
Yeah,
this is why he is scum.
yeah,
And like, why are we not harping on this? And why did
yeah.
Bethenny not push on this?
I
And
know.
instead they went the route of, we think Ariana
Yeah,
showed it to people, which is
yeah.
like a big claim.
It's a very big claim, and to say that she distributed it too, like just that she sent it around, like
That it like
any
literally is
form of
illegal.
distribution. Yeah, yeah, that's just it. And like in California, it's a two consent party state where you have to be like, you have to both consent to being recorded if you're being recorded electronically or whatever. And obviously that didn't happen, so he literally like, he's broken the law, he's done something horrendous to a person, like he's done something that you should never do to a person, and he's not like, we're not seeing his feet held to the fire at all.
No.
And it's really upsetting, actually. Well, and this is kind of interesting because it does bring us into like the inconsistencies conversation quite nicely, because one of the inconsistencies is this idea that Tom and Rachel, so confused, so many names. Tom and Rachel had a conversation that was filmed for the like finale, the new finale,
Right.
the Scandoval finale of season 10, and that conversation was taken out by, actually I guess this isn't even an inconsistency, I think this is technically a truth, like this conversation was taken out
That's true.
of the show. Like we didn't see Rachel confront Tom and say, why did you film that?
Yeah.
And apparently he like had like a little hissy fit, had a little temper tantrum, and he told production he would not film again if they aired that section of whatever they taped. And Stassi actually was the one that brought this up in her podcast to kind of like talk about that, because she's like, this is something that happened all of the time when I was filming. Like these guys were constantly getting away with all of this stuff. And like one of the things that we had talked about earlier, like back when this like all was airing, is that we knew that there was this fight between Katie's mom and Tom Sandoval in
Oh
the
yeah.
original version of the finale, and that Tom Sandoval had actually yelled at Katie's mom like multiple times, and
Yeah.
Katie's brother had to keep on breaking up the fight because he was like, why are you yelling at this person? Like, what is
Yeah,
wrong with you? And we never got that footage either. So it's
it's
like,
true.
why
And
is production like saving this guy? Like, he's an
I don't
awful human being.
know.
These are two really bad conversations that like we definitely should have been privy to
That's true.
in some respect. In some,
Why? Yeah, and like there's a lot of conversations you can have a whole other podcast about the fact that like Bravo does just tend to favor
men,
men a
yeah.
lot of the time. And like, but it also just makes me wonder like if there's a lot of times when these guys, Jax, Tom and Tom, have
Tom
I guess
Girardi,
been oh my god, just all the
all of the
Toms,
times.
just been able to get scenes removed, just
Yeah.
knowing how bad some of the Jax scenes are, what was removed?
What's the stuff that stays and what's the stuff that goes? Yeah, that's a really
Like, is
excellent
there
question.
worse stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. Like, like Stassi herself obviously comes with a whole set of her own things. But I would be curious to hear more. I think that this is something that I think I would be interested, like talk about reality reckoning. I would love to hear a bit more of a tell-all kind of experience from people like Stassi. Like if you think about the One Tree Hill girls that are doing their own podcast, like let's have a
Yes,
podcast about this and let's have a real reality reckoning. If this is what we're gonna do, like let's pop off, let's get into it. I'm down. I
that's
want to
it.
hear about this. Stassi's never gonna be hired by Bravo again. Like
Just
let it
not
all out.
from Bethenny.
Yeah, not from Bethenny. That ideally not from Bethenny. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that was you know what's another one that's not an inconsistency, but I think it's just a straight up lie, so I
Yeah.
apologize
That's
to
cool.
go backwards.
That's perfect.
But it was so frustrating is that Bethenny is just saying so recklessly that
Yeah.
like Ariana must have forgiven Tom because they still live together, or at least she's forgiven
Right.
him enough to still live together. And
Yeah.
like this is just so Ariana said like nope, that's not true. But
Yeah.
like the reason that this is so frustrating is because Bethenny had literally went through like a what 10, 12 years divorce, and
Hmm.
she had to live with her ex for a long
Yeah.
time because like if you leave, I'm pretty sure like I don't know the like
It's
specifics
like
of it, but like if you
squatters'
leave,
rights. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
they basically can keep the place.
Yeah.
Like you know how difficult it is to split up assets and go
Yeah.
through that type of thing. And like Bethenny also just kept diminishing the fact that, you know, they weren't married and they didn't have kids. And it's just
Yeah.
like that, like, yeah, okay, you were married and you went through this, but like you went through such a horrible, you know, ending of a relationship. And it's
Hmm.
just so messy and just like not okay that you are now trying to paint this picture for someone else. Like
Yeah. No, exactly. And
she
that's
knows
just
better.
she should know better. And that's just it. That's something that like Ariana brings up in the podcast today is that like she she has her own financial situation. She's trying to sort herself out. She has a lawyer. She has a financial advisor. She has one other thing. She had three things. Whatever that last one was, an accountant, something like that. She's opening a restaurant. She's like, yes, she has a bunch of commercial deals and all this stuff, but like that money isn't guaranteed forever. That is like one-time payments. Like she's setting herself up for success. And even if she does want to one day move, like it should be on her own terms. And even when they bought the house, I think it was like season 7 when they were purchasing the house, she was like, this is my house, like I want to live here. If Tom and I ever break up, because they like there was a whole conversation about the fact that they like weren't married and were they ever going to get married, whatever. She's like, if Tom and I ever break up, like this is my house, I am staying in this house, because she already knew at that point that like this is where she wanted to be. And in the podcast today she also says like, I have an aging cat and I have a dog, and this is their home, and like this is where they live, and cats are very like territorial and they're weird, and if you can't just like move them lightly, right? Like they don't just
Yeah.
move from place to place. Like they're very much like creatures of habit of their space, and you don't just like do that.
Yeah. And like why are we not talking about how like Tom just
Tom
won't
should move
leave? Like
out.
Tom is a
Yeah,
like you cheated, you
that's
should
just
move
it.
out.
And
Like
plus,
why are people getting mad at Ariana and talking about her
yeah.
financials?
And like
Like
why should she be the one that leave? He's the one that wrecked the home. He should be the one that leaves. And didn't Rachel also say that she had given him a key? She'd given him a key to her apartment when she
yeah.
left. So like he technically would have been able to like stay somewhere else, but he chose to be a dickhead and stay in the house. So
I think
Ariana shouldn't leave.
the new takeaway of this podcast is just like Sandoval still sucks,
Sucks.
and so does Bethenny.
Done. Excommunicated over both of them.
Excommunicado.
Oh my god, yeah. It's so bad. Are we ready to get into the reunion? This is kind of the next big topic, I feel like, just because there's so much that happens and the reunion, the tensions were so high,
The
right?
dramatic reading from Bethenny that just re-traumatized
Yeah,
Rachel
I
for
know.
the sake of her podcast.
Right? Well, and talk about like because Bethenny says like if I were your mother, like I would have killed her for like saying these things to you. And it's like, just to go back quickly to the FaceTiming thing, it's like, so you would have killed Ariana for calling
It's
her
so
a
true.
dementor and subhuman, but like you wouldn't kill Tom Sandoval for what he
For
did to Rachel?
recording her,
Like,
it's
come
so true.
on.
It's
Yeah.
so well, that's just it, and that's just because like well, like we were saying before, look, like the reunion was
It was bad.
bad.
It was bad.
And to be fair, like I don't think any of that's put on Ariana. Like I think she reacted. It was so fresh for her. Like,
Yeah, it was
what
3
do you
weeks.
expect her to do? I think if anything, like from a mental health perspective, like they should have pushed it out. Like it was too
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Everyone was too fresh. The
Yeah.
goal was going to be to gang up on Rachel.
Yeah.
It's true, the goal was not resolution. It was
Yeah.
just like there was too much.
Yeah.
And like we all talked about how we, everyone kind of got wrapped up in it and
Yeah.
everything like that. But like Bethenny going in and just watching this reunion, not having any context of what got everyone up to the point that they were at, specifically Ariana, and then also talking about it, taking out everything Rachel did or said, and only having all of the stuff that everyone else said to her, which was bad.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not a balanced conversation.
No, exactly. Well, and that's just it. And like in the podcast, Sheena's podcast today, Ariana does like say like I did go too hard at the reunion, and as you say, it was so fresh. But she also backs up like what she said, because she's like, in that moment, I think anybody would have responded the way that I did. Like that is just how I'm feeling about it. And I was at the point where I never wanted to talk to that person ever again, and I'm still at the point where I never want to talk to that person ever again. And it's actually a really one fun little side note is that like Ariana does not talk about Tom Sandoval. She talks about her ex. Like she specifically does not like
she won't even name him. I love it.
Name him. It's so good. But I also thought it was interesting that one thing that Rachel said about the reunion is she says that I never had an opportunity to speak. And I don't think that's entirely true. I think a lot of the times the things that she was saying kind of got shut down. I think one thing that comes to mind is James and Lala can't talk because they blanked. And so like she was trying to make arguments, and the arguments just kind of like fell flat. They didn't really make any sense. Like she was saying that she was accountable. She did say things in the reunion. It's not like she didn't get a chance to speak. And if anything, out of the two of them, between like Rachel and Tom Sandoval, I actually feel like Tom Sandoval was the one that didn't get a chance to speak, because literally nobody wanted to hear from him. Like
it's true, everyone just went like boo.
Exactly. Like as soon as he started talking, everybody was like, I don't know who you are. I don't want to hear you. I don't see you. La 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 la. Like, and that's what we wanted. That was great. But like I don't know. Like it just for her to kind of like frame it in that way, it's just kind of like frustrating.
And also to be like, I showed this to my therapist and I also gave him no additional context.
Yeah.
It was just like, and then also like just her reading it slowly all in one. Like that's traumatizing. This girl just got out of like a 3-month like
rehab
basically, and you're gonna be like, let's remember all the things that people said to you that were horrible.
Do you want to know what a bad person you are? Let me tell you, line by line.
It's just like,
I know it was really bad. One interesting thing that I kind of also thought, and I think this kind of talks to what we talked about before with like the Rachel like getting paid and like her making $361,000 last year and all that good stuff, is that she really frames it as if she doesn't have any business opportunities. And we did kind of touch on this, right? Like I said, like she could have shopped this interview around. She didn't have to go to talk to Bethenny for free. Bethenny's allegedly paying her, but like, once iHeartRadio takes their percentage and Bethenny takes her percentage, like what's Rachel really gonna get from this? When like she could have just gone to somebody who would have actually like paid her a decent amount of money. She also could have returned to Vanderpump Rules. Like she had honestly the ultimate business opportunity, and just because you weren't going to get paid like what everybody else was getting paid, like you still would have been getting a pretty penny.
True.
That's your
Although
business opportunity, and that's your ability to
yeah.
rehab your image so that you can have business opportunities in the future. When that sorry quick little tangent, when that last 5 minutes happened of Vanderpump Rules season 10 and she like aired all of like the timeline and like finally told the truth, like that was her best move of the season, because it was setting
It's
her up
true.
for season 11 to be her redemption arc, her coming back, her taking down Sandoval with all the other ladies, which they would have done. Maybe she never would have been able to film with Ariana. That's fine. Everybody else is filming with Sandoval. You can film with them too. Like chances
Yeah.
are, Ariana, like Lala's already reached out apparently. Like I just think that you've unfortunately made some very bad moves, and you think that you don't have any business opportunities, and you did, unfortunately, and now you probably don't.
Yeah. No, it's true. And like, I don't know. I go back and forth between being like, it's probably not great for her mental health to continue to be filming,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think going on this podcast with Bethenny is either, and getting the reaction that she's getting. I feel like it should have either been like literally take a break
Yeah.
and like go underground
Yeah, like
and like
legitimately like recede.
give everyone a time to like, I don't know, kind
Yeah,
of
recoup.
recover. Yeah, just like
Forget.
recoup.
Like,
Don't do this. Or also
yeah,
apparently did you at the end of this podcast she said she is starting
a
another podcast,
podcast for
and
mental health, because apparently there's no mental health
but it
podcasts out there, guys.
but it also sounded like she's making a podcast for mistresses.
For mistresses and misters.
Like, cause she's like right? Like it's like
It does. That's exactly what it sounds like.
is this like a mistresses side of the story podcast?
I don't
Justice
know.
for mistresses.
Which, like, fair enough. Like, yeah, tell their side of the story, but like, it sounds like it's really like pigeonholing you to a very specific market. Like, I don't know.
I'm still just so upset that the storyline is not how she is bearing the brunt of
Yeah,
this and Tom Sandoval is out there living life.
yeah.
That's the interview I wanted.
I know. That's the interview I wanted to. That's what I'm really upset by.
It's just,
Well,
it's all, yeah.
it's really bad. Well, and that's just it too, right? Like Lala, like this whole thing about like Lala, because Rachel, sorry, just to let you guys know what's in my mind right now. Um, in the podcast with Bethenny, Rachel says that Lala had reached out and said that she was offering to lend an ear and that she was willing to hear like her side of the story. And Rachel just kind of like goes into it with the assumption that Lala is coming with an agenda and Lala's coming for a storyline.
I
And
mean, I
she
can understand why she would think that.
I can understand why she would think that, but I also just feel like I don't know, like I just think that like if you're getting that opportunity, you're clearly like a door is open here for you,
Yeah,
like take it. Like you need that door right now. And like it's just I also think that like part of the reason why she doesn't trust Lala is because Sandoval told her to never trust Lala, right? Like
right.
he created this situation in which Lala and Katie were the enemy. Ariana was, a demon, and Schwartz and him were the only ones you could trust. Maybe Sheena, because Sheena was like whatever in her own little world. She wasn't even going to really be a thing in season 10. Um, and so he like wanted her to be isolated from the other girls because he could more easily manipulate her, which is what he's done with Ariana for all of the other seasons. And now it's finally wearing off, and Ariana is becoming her own person. But like, I don't know, for her to think that like Lala has an agenda, and for her to like not see that Sandoval has an agenda and has always had an agenda when it comes to her is just
Yeah.
like so annoying.
No. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Except for I still just question Lala's like change of heart that she has
For
had.
sure,
So
100%.
like
Lala is not forgiven until we see every single episode of season 11 because that hug with Sandoval on the beach is very shady to me and I do not appreciate it, but I will at least give her that she probably at least would have. It was good that she reached out to Rachel, but whatever.
yeah.
Too
Well
bad
then
because Rachel slammed the door shut and is in this space now.
yeah,
So,
she told
yeah.
Bethenny she was never going back to reality TV, to which Bethenny's like, good for you. You know, you could have gone back into the garbage. This is like also really annoyed me from even from the start of Bethenny's rewatch podcast, where she
Yeah.
started talking about
Bravo.
rewatching the Housewives while
Yeah.
simultaneously shit talking them for like
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
She would also call it the garbage. She's like, I'm
Mhm.
doing this podcast because I'm not in the garbage. I'm talking to esteemed actors about the garbage. Like,
About the
stop calling it
garbage.
garbage. Like, you're like, I don't know
Yeah.
why. It just sets me off. I'm like, so many of us love this stuff. It's so
Yeah.
insulting to literally
Yeah.
everyone.
It is literally so insulting to everyone. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with
Like, we're
Bethany.
not here
She's
sitting
just
like, hey, we have a podcast about
about
trash.
garbage.
It's such garbage that we want to talk about it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I feel like to talk about like reality TV as garbage is quite like a masculine kind of like I feel like men talk about reality TV as garbage just because they want to discredit like the things that we love. And like it's
It's
not
true.
garbage. We love it. We're obsessed with it. We
Some of
literally
it is though.
watch so much of it. And
Not
Beth and
this.
well, maybe some of it's garbage, but that's fine. That's what it's allowed to be. Not all TV has to be like, so highbrow.
Yeah, but it was just like she was just like, oh, like good for you, Rachel. Like
Yeah.
you're above it all. Like you are on
You're
morally
killing
high
it.
ground.
Yeah, exactly. So the last couple of things that I wanted to mention for the inconsistencies, because I know there's so many. I'm sorry. I was just like
Oh
so trigger happy when I was writing my notes.
yeah, you
Um,
were like in school. Like this was
I
an
was. I
assignment.
worked harder on this than I've worked on anything in my entire life. Um, so she talked about her kind of like her perception of herself in season 10, right? And how people
Oh yes.
are like in season 10, I was so different. And referring to her castmates, they would go like, oh man, who is that girl? And it's just so she's basically saying that she was acting so differently to her castmates and in general, I guess, after her relationship ending with James, that people wouldn't even like recognize her. And she thought it was weird, essentially, that they didn't realize that something was wrong or something was different to her, right? And
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh, it was so out of character for me. Like this season
exactly.
was so out of character and like
Yeah.
almost blaming others for not realizing that it was out of character."
Yeah, which is completely false because that's what all of season 10 was about. All of season 10 was about how she was all of a sudden Mrs. like steal your girl and sorry, well, steal your guy, whatever, steal
We can
your
do this,
man.
girls.
Steal your girl too, why not? And like yeah, like Mrs. Steal Your Man, and like this was the Tom Schwartz conversation. This was what everything this season was about. Like Tom Schwartz literally made a joke about how she was into married men and like into taken men or whatever. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I just thought
And
that was like a weird thing for her to say.
she also like just came out of a relationship and like it was very much seeming like this was her like being like this is me as a person, like I'm not just like James's girlfriend now, and like she was finding herself, so I feel like there was an expectation that she was going to be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Like
But
she was clearly going through something and
yeah,
she's still going through something, and that's why I
yeah,
think like keep going back to it, but like I think everyone just keeps looking at this podcast and being like this just set her back so
so
far and it
much.
didn't
Yeah,
need to, because like you do feel sorry for her. Like I don't remember who said this. One of the podcasts that I listened to said something that was so
yeah.
interesting, and it's like you can be a villain and a victim in certain
Yeah,
contexts, and
yeah.
like I do think that that really does apply for her. I think that she did
Mm-hmm.
something horrible, but she's also clearly just like not well and
Yeah,
like has so much to figure out.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if she's like I worry, I guess, that is she capable of figuring it out? That's kind of the part that like I am still kind of questioning in all of
Well,
this.
that
It
yeah,
does
and that's
because as of right now, it doesn't seem like she's capable of doing that. But maybe she will be one day.
and also like we keep saying like, oh, we would have liked to see her come back and take on Sandoval, and like if this interview is any indication, like
She wouldn't have
maybe
done
this is what we would have gotten, and
Yeah.
and if that's the case, like, I'm good.
She would have thought it was like me against the world, and me and Sandoval against everybody else. Yeah.
Just to finish, oh, sorry, do you have more inconsistencies?
I have
You did so many, I want to
one.
make sure that we get to them.
I have one last one. And so it's basically just how she has a report of how Alex Baskin says that she and like Scandoval basically saved VPR. It's a little bit inconsistent because Sheena and Ariana actually say that he didn't say that. So I wanted to just do a little bit of research just to see what he actually said so that we can clear the air.
And could you let people know who Alex Baskin is?
So Alex Baskin is the executive producer of Vanderpump Rules. I think he's also the executive producer for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills because they have the same production company.
Not to be mistaken for Carol. Is it Carol Baskin from the Tiger King?
Different
I
Baskin.
always think about that.
That's so funny. I didn't think about that. So he said this in an article to Dateline. He says the timing of Scandoval happened to have been perfect, which proves what Rachel says. But then he says it was insane and proof that there was still a monoculture. The story of Vanderpump is one of survival more than anything. We were coming off a really tough 9th season, and we had the cast firings the season before in season 8 when they let go of Stassi and Kristen and Jax. And there was a low energy season during the pandemic. To the network's credit, they gave us another run at it, and we had a resurgence anyway, obviously referring to Scandoval again. So that is just to prove that they are both right in this situation. You know, yes, Vanderpump Rules probably wouldn't have gotten picked up for an 11th season. Like, I think that the way that the finale, the original version of the finale was the kind of like culminated with them having this like meeting at SUR and the fights that were happening and the speech that Lisa Vanderpump gave, it very much had the feeling of a series ending. And obviously Scandoval came along and Ariana picked up the phone and said, hey, this crazy thing just happened. I think you guys should get over here. And they were able to revive Vanderpump Rules for at least another season or two.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone, like, no one can refute that, but it's more like my problem with this whole thing is that it's not because of Rachel and Tom Sandoval's, being good for reality TV. It's because
it's against it.
It's against them. Yeah, because they literally tried to keep it off camera.
Yeah, exactly.
So like this isn't like your master plan, and it just so happened to have revitalized the show because it got out, and we got to watch it both in how we would have thought about it and then watch it knowing what we know. Exactly. It was wild.
It was the craziest thing we've ever seen in our entire lives.
It was so crazy. And yes, it did 100% revive Vanderpump Rules, but it's literally in spite of you.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually Ariana that saved the show, right? Like Ariana, if she had not called production and said, hey, get over here, like we wouldn't have had this, like, or we would have heard about it at the reunion. We would have like, oh, that would have been a cool thing to hear about next year, but I don't know if they're gonna get another season. So like, yeah.
That's true. In the closing words, can you tell me what you heard on Lala's podcast that you have been waiting to tell me?
So I thought that this was so funny. Okay, so at the beginning of Lala's podcast, when they talk about the fact that they're gonna talk about the Bethenny and Rachel interview, they're like, I can't believe that Bethenny didn't do any research. Everybody's comparing it to like the Howie Mandel podcast, but like that's not fair. We love Howie. Howie's not a Bravo podcast. But then
wait, Lala said this?
Yeah, well, Lala's friend said this.
They love Howie because they had him on their podcast.
That's just it. They love Howie because now he's on their podcast, so they're best friends with Howie, and they've taken photos with Howie, and them and Howie are on first name basis.
Stop. Yeah. Did Lala not also like crap on the Howie Mandel podcast when it first came out? 1,000,000%.
Like the most. She literally got turned her story. I'm going to got like such a high decibel. She literally went onto her stories because she was so like upset by it. And like, allegedly that like because Bethenny is part of the Bravo world, she should be held to a higher standard than Howie Mandel, even though Howie Mandel literally did the interview with Tom Sandoval, like as Scandoval was breaking, and he literally had his daughter sitting right next to him that could have done the entire interview, but no, can't do it because then you'd be questioning Tom Sandoval. But Howie gets a free pass because all men in this world get a free pass. Happy Barbie year, everybody.
That's also, it's always what it comes down to.
That's what it
Wow,
always comes
that's
down
so
to.
hilarious. Okay, I understand why you were
Yeah.
riled up about
Yeah,
that.
I was super riled up, and I thought that you'd be like incensed about it too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just not surprised. Like I just like
No, never
it's so
surprised.
much whiplash, but
Never be surprised,
never be
unfortunately.
surprised. So that's our take on why this interview was a major fail and set both of the women back in what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. If we
Um,
missed anything in our notes, let us know because we have a lot of notes, but still there's just so many hours of content out there. So it's
there's
hard to
so
capture it
much.
all.
As always, what are you watching? What are you listening to? What do you want us to capture next? If you're not subscribed, get subscribed. Please help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Probably should have said that earlier, but we were just too into
Just
it.
so much happening, so much to get through, couldn't get to it.